Okay, so today we're going to be looking at a food magnet, but just a little bit of kind of being able to put your harness on the puppy, which you will see later in the modules, but just so we're going to equip our dog. Obviously he's got a collar on. Legally, we have to have an identity tag, so I tend to leave a collar on my dog, especially at a later point. You know, with young puppies, I'm definitely going to take the collar off in the crate, but I also want to adjust them to getting used to a collar because they will itch around their collar a lot to start with. So ideally, I'm going to pop the collar on when they come out of the crate, and they're going to, you know, as adult dogs, be wearing the collar with the tag on all the time should they get lost and we need to find them. Okay, so when I'm putting the harness on, and again, as I say, you can see this more in module 4, treat in my hand. I'm going to do it a kind of quick way. Rather than put the clip over the neck, I am going to try and get the dog to put the head through it. Obviously, it's a little bit awkward with a stuffed dog with their ears. Okay, so I give him the little treat. Make sure it's nice and comfy around the collar. I'd have done a little bit of pre-work on the clips, okay? So I'd have done some clip sounds. So just making the sound of the clip and then yip, and feed the dog, okay? And when I'm putting the harness on, I tend to talk them through the process. So I'll say, let's just do the clip, yip, and then I feed the puppy, okay? On comes the lead. Again, I'm going to talk them through the process. Because I'm doing it one-handed, I'm going to make sure the clip's nice and upright, ready for me to do. And I'm just going to say, let's pop on your lead, okay? I'm going to pop the treat there just to keep them distracted. Yip, as soon as they hear the clip sound behind their ears so that they're okay with those sounds. Okay, so now we've got our dog ready, okay? What we may need to do with a very young pup is just, they will be a little bit worried sometimes by the pressure on the harness and the new sensation. So it's always worth doing a little bit of pre-work, putting the harness on, maybe applying it to something kind of fun to do, like your little food circuit game that you'll see later in the modules, or maybe I do a little bit of toy play, or maybe I'll link it to harness goes on and then I'm going to give you your dinner. Or I could do a little food scatter so that they're used to walking around and just moving with the harness and doing a little bit of a food scatter in the garden. So do some pre-work with them just walking around with the harness on. Okay, now we've got our lead attached. We could do some kind of just manual kind of touch in the harness, yip, and feed. Little bit, maybe tiny bit of pressure, yip and feed. Okay, just so that they're getting used to that pressure. What we're trying to focus on today is something that I want you to practice, ideally in the home first, and then take it into the garden, which is I call the food magnet. So once you're able to, and you've built that up effectively, just be able to walk around the garden, always keeping that kind of smile in the lead. No matter where your hand is, you still want a smile between your hand and the clip so that there's hardly any pressure. But there's going to be times when your puppy, you know, wants to go to a sniff or see something in the environment where the lead is going to go straight and they're really focused on something and you want to get their attention. Now, obviously, you've got things like your kissy noise, your positive interrupter, but we can also, sometimes they will get a little bit stuck where their emotions are quite high, and it may be that you've ended up quite low, you know, quite far down the lead where you're not so much help to your puppy. So what we want to practice is walking up the lead. So the aim of this is to keep the two front paws still so the dog doesn't get to go forward. So we've got that kind of straight lead and we're literally going to walk up the lead. Okay, and as we get to the dog's nose, we're going to have a little handful of food in this scenario. Okay, and we're going to let the dog start munching that food as we turn them around, and then munch all the way as you're backing off a little bit to get them away from whatever stimulus it was that you were using it. Okay, now the difference between the food magnet and a lure, if I'm luring the dog, I'm going to get him to follow the lure and then yip, and feed. So if I were trying to get him to follow it out, I'm not going to allow the dog to eat instantly. When I'm using a food magnet, the dog is eating the minute and if they stop eating, I'm just going to, or go back to the stimulus as I turn. So say puppy's eating, and then goes back, I'm going to go return to them, okay, and let them munch away at that food. Now, sometimes I find, you need to have plenty, particularly when you're outdoors, you're going to need a little bit of variety in food. You're going to need your 50-pound notes for some of these things, because it may be that your puppy's saying hello to a dog. You can see that the other dog isn't really that comfortable maybe your puppy is building up arousal level, not really listening to the other dog and able to take on their body language signals yet. So I need to get my puppy out of there because the other dog is uncomfortable. Okay, so it's in those situations where we're going to be using our food magnet, but what we want to do is make sure the dog is receptive and kind of understands those before we need to use them in real situations. Now, sometimes I will use a paste. So you can buy all sorts of different pastes for dogs. Do check out how good they are for your dog. And obviously think about the flavour and the proteins that they've already had. So if your puppy's really used to chicken, you would go for a chicken flavoured one. Fish can be quite nice and soft for the stomach as well. Okay. Now with some of these, you can actually, you know, when you're squeezing them, sometimes it comes out a little bit lumpy, but what you can get with some makes is a little attachment that goes onto the top of them. Okay, which makes a better licking surface for the dog. Okay, and then sometimes being able to squeeze that and then turn them around, or what I might do is squeeze some of it onto my hand, but it does make it a little bit more difficult for the mechanical skills of walking up the lead because obviously you've got a load of paste in your hand. Okay, and very occasionally I might use a kind of a cheesy one that we might get from the supermarket. Just be a bit careful because some puppies that's going to affect their stomach, but you can try it and see how you go. Okay, so we're going to go and have a look at this with some real dogs. Okay, and what I would propose is once your puppy's used to the harness and you've done a little bit of this around the house, then start practicing in the garden, and you're going to see on some of the videos following that we're going to put some things down to distract the puppy. I have some kind of little, it's football training kind of discs, which you've got a hole, which I put some food in. And my puppy has played that game indoors and outdoors. They know there's food in them. So I can go and plant those around the garden and then go and practice some of my lead work skills because they know there's going to be food in there. So they're going to be drawn to them. Okay. And that gives you a nice kind of setup situation for you to practice your skills. So let's just have a look at that again. Walking up the lead. Okay, so we happen to be on the end of the lead. We had a smile in the lead, but now puppy's seen something and they've pulled towards it and I've got a straight lead. Okay, so I'm going to keep the puppy's feet still, walk up the lead. Okay, come in with my food. Yummy, 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 yummy. Turn them away. Keep moving as they're feeding. So the further I can get away from the stimulus, obviously the calmer the dog's going to be. Once I've got them away, what I may do is then drop some treats on the floor so that they're busy kind of sniffing, which will, and collecting their treats, which will just help to calm the situation down and help to calm their emotions down. Okay, so let's go and have a look at this in practice with some real dogs. So this is little Ellie that we'd already done some lead pressure work on, and now we're practicing that food magnet. So I've got some cream cheese on the cone. I'm going to indicate to her to go in to see that. I'm going to walk up the lead, food on the nose, and allow her to start consuming that food straight away from the minute it's on her nose. So you need a good handful of food for this to work. She starts to go back, and you can see as my one hand goes on the lead, because of the lead sensitivity, she just turns back towards me. But I know she's going to want to investigate that cream cheese again, so let's see how she works out to get it. It never worked from my left side, so let's try the right side. Okay, so she goes in, just plant those front feet, so I'm not pulling the dog away at all from the distraction, allowing her to eat the second she's turning. Okay, turning away. Now, if I turn my body now, she would have probably just walked off with me. As it is, I stay facing the... Oh, no, she does go back. Okay, and little hand on the lead, and you can see because of her lead sensitivity work, she comes straight out. Now, I've taken her a little bit further away from the stimulus, and you can see then as I turn my body, she came out. This is a little Mally pup, so I'm trying to work on lip there and a little bit of mind pulling initially. Okay, they're back onto the food in the cone, and that's what I'm using as my stimulus. So that could be my dog she's saying hello to, or something on the floor. You could see there was a little gap there, okay, and she immediately dropped her head, and then she goes back to the stimulus. So this is great opportunity to practice on things like this. So eating the food, bringing that head up, just keep letting her eat and eat and eat as she moves away, and then obviously you would move on depending on the stimulus. So this is looking at it in more of a real life situation. So this is a little residential dog. He's about a year old. He's very under socialized, so he would bark and lunge at other dogs, and this is about session 5 that we're doing here with him. So you can see the garden set up. I've got some of the cones out. I've actually put food in them because I'm trying to keep nose to the floor, keep him calm, just sniffing games, food search games, in the presence of the other dog. And you can see that little bit of kind of my body language indicating where I want him to go there. Okay, he's gone off sniffing and I've just followed him. So there's a little bit of kind of following the dog and giving the dog the choice in these situations as well. Does he want to go closer? Is he ready to go closer? I've obviously got to provide that leadership as well based on his emotional responses. And you're going to see as he goes in here, I obviously work out that his emotions aren't right. I do a kissy noise, no response. So I know the emotions aren't right. So I do the food magnet. I walk up the lead. He's dodging around a bit. Get that food on his nose. Let him munch and turn away. And I just use, with that little bit of distance, the noise then worked. Throw the food on the floor. Get him sniffing. And then as he turned around to look at Easy again, I've just marked him for looking.
Yep.
Yeah, I've marked disengagement there, but he's too interested in the dog. You can see that nose go. So I do walk up the lead and he immediately turns. Interested in the dog again, little tap on the lead, and now I increase distance because I can see his arousal levels kind of quite high, so we need to be able to add distance away from the dog and to calm him down, get him back into his nose work before we kind of venture back. A little bit of pulling between the cones there. Gonna do a little bit of a lead tap, see if I get that response I want, and again I don't feel he's really ready, so I'm just kind of moving away from the dog rather than towards the dog at this point until I've got him calmer. So that sustained sniffing will kind of help him to calm down, which I could produce with a food scatter. He looked at the dog, I've marked him, fed him, bit of drip feeding. Going back to the cones. The cones could lead him into trouble a little bit, so you do need to have some experience handling this, but it's just to show you in a real life situation where your dog may be a little bit worried about something or a little bit over aroused by something, showing different behaviours, and you're working at trying to create a more balanced kind of behaviour in that situation, using your response to lead pressure and using your food magnets. So I am attempting to work closer to the dog to see if I can get a better level of engagement. So there he's looking at the dog. I just come up the lead a little bit. I sense he's a little bit calmer. And he made the decision himself to come out. Okay, so I marked his disengagement. Okay, and then I thought I'll wander off again, creating that little bit of distance for him.